Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in our modern times. We are now in almost instant communication about a little part, less than a second difference, but still we are basically on the same time, and we are now in contact and speaking. I'm sorry that all kinds of circumstances are not any of my doing, but at least I could not by any means come, and hopefully this will be, if not all the merit or value of coming in person, it will at least be a communication, and later on a little bit also of a two-way communication with you. Now, the subject is really a matter of your choice. I wanted initially to have another subject, which I thought would be more fun and perhaps more educational, to speak about animals. I wanted for many years, and somehow people always say, okay, next time, which never comes. So any other subject seems to be preferable to animals. So instead we are now talking about demons, and so you will have a whole class about demons, and which is somehow connected to those pages of Gemara that some of you learned in Masechet Pesachim, which was dealing with this subject. Now, these pages in the Tractate Pesachim that deal with demons are only a part of what is generally in the Talmud, not to speak about other sources that deal with the subject of demons. There are I would say that generally speaking, the subject here is a little bit technical. It deals with more or less one specific subject, and a little bit it goes in and out of it. But in other parts of the Talmud, we have also other sources that deal with demons in one way or another. So all in all, there is, I won't say a big amount. You cannot make a book of it, but you can make a booklet that deals with Talmudic demons. Now, in many ways, it is not an easy subject to talk about. It's not an easy subject to talk about because of people in our times are, so to say, enlightened and sophisticated and so very clever. Because of all that, they are really apt to be victims of the least and sometimes most degrading parts of superstitions, beliefs, and others that are just a part of modern times environment and experience. One has to remember that seemingly humanity in general has perhaps an inner need to have a big selection of materials to occupy its mind. Most of it are not very important subjects. But some of them are subjects that are very real to those who are in them, not very important to other people that may scoff and laugh at them. So demons are, in that sense, they are, let me put it this way, the worst things about demons in our times is they are not a la mode. They are not a part of modern times environment, modern times scriptures and cultures. Even though when one reads a part of the books or sees some of the films that they deal with all kinds of subjects, you will have many books that are about fantasy, which is now taking up a certain amount of the readership of America as well as other places, in which it's basically the same kind of world, a world of magic, a world of unearthly beings of all kinds, and they are basically accepted as long as you don't call them demons. There are also all kinds of ghost stories and horror stories. Many of them are really connected with the same subject too. So demons didn't pass or didn't disappear from the world. They did what demons are very good at doing. They changed their faces. You see, and because of that, you just don't recognize them. And they are still existing in a way. To say it in a very general way, it is not something that I'm really created. The idea is, I would put it this way, that one of the most important deeds of demons in our times as in the past is to try to appear as non-existent. See, because if they are not existent, you are not aware of them, you don't beware of them, and they live with us a very comfortable life, and sometimes they thrive and grow, as in other parts of the Talmud speaks about them, the huge amount of demons, saying that we are followed by thousands, perhaps myriads of demons on every step of ours, but luckily or unluckily we don't see them, and we don't have too much to do with them. Now, all this is to begin the subject as not as something has to deal with. So look at our stupid forefathers, what kind of nonsense that they believed in. Basically, we are not changing that very much. To quote some of the modern time writers, the idea that humanity changed very much in the last 5,000 years seemed to be a very unscientific and very unreal assumption. People basically remain the same. We change fashions in our dresses, and sometimes we go back and forth into having more or less the same kind of garb from every 100 years or so. We change, come back and go back to the same form. It's also about ideas, notions, beliefs. They are changing slightly. They are moving, shifting all the time, but people basically didn't change it that much. Now, I'm not going just to begin with the Talmudic demons. They are a subject in themselves. But let me speak about. See, it's possibly it's now daytime for you, and the sun is shining, and the California air with this pollution is all around you, so you don't have to be afraid now of demons. But basically, the basic notion which is a notion is evil, in any sense of it, is evil real? See, many people, say, Christian scientists and so, claim that they don't believe in evil. At best, evil is considered as a kind of a lack, a gap, a dark corner, which doesn't contain anything. So the question about evil is a question that people from time to time have to think about and have to ponder, because the question whether evil is real or unreal is not just a matter of philosophical discussions. It is a question that has to do in one way with big political issues. It has to do with social issues. And it has to do also with everyday issues. And the question is evil just a lack of something? I mean, is it just a dark corner that doesn't really, nothing exists in there except the fear? Now, what I'm saying, which is, it's perhaps not full of light and optimism, is that whether we want it or not, whether we try, and we try very hard to ignore it, evil does exist in the world, in different forms, very many different forms, and some of it, and also in different levels, different degrees. See, evil is not just what the person does something by chance and breaks his leg by walking on the sidewalk on a banana peel. But evil has something more than it, and I'm now speaking about, can there be evil as an essence, as a thing, as something that has real, I would say, real existence, real life? Now, we try, of course, to give them all kinds of other names, but a part of it, and that is a part which has to be understood not only in what I call in contemporary or in everyday life, but also in the big picture of the world. Evil does and surely did exist. It exists sometimes almost as pure evil as one can speak about. It is sometimes which, since we see it, but again, if it is perhaps a way in which the newspapers try to deal with smaller kinds of evil, and they don't. Nobody has the power or the courage to face it as a big picture. But it is there. It is there. It is there. Even when it has some explanations or excuses, but it exists in the real world. Exists in the real world in small things. It exists in the bigger pictures, in a bigger way. Why is it important to emphasize it? Because ignoring evil, believing that evil can be dispersed by all kinds of nice light means you bring a little bit of light, you bring a little bit of riches, comfort, a better life, and then you stop all evil. But it does not. It does not. And in many ways, the idea that in so many places that evildoers are just a group of ignorant people, and people that don't have any education, that live a very harsh and hard life, it's just not true. See, there can be also evil that is going on, all kinds of lack, all kinds of misery, objective misery, that has nothing to do with evil. A hungry man can behave in many ways, and an angry man can also do all kinds of things. And people happen in this. But there is something that goes much more beyond that. There is in the world, perhaps everywhere, and perhaps in everyone, there is a grain, a seed, sometimes more than a small point or patch of it, of evil, which is, I would say, evil for its own sake. Evil for its own sake, which is something that I cannot really defend. I can't really explain. And now you can find little traces of it in the papers. The things that are happening are usually hidden by distance or hidden by ignorance and by other things. But when it's not only, I'm not going to speak about the Shoah, which was given it the terrible name of Holocaust. But I'm not going to speak about it, even though it's one of those big shows of concentrated, organized, scientifically based kind of evil that was so horrible. Horrible, not in when we speak about numbers, because when you speak about bigger numbers, things cease to be meaningful. But when you deal with cases, with individuals, with little stories, then you can see how it goes. Not only at one point, but evil didn't cease with the Shoah. Evil existed and does exist everywhere in Africa in a big amount, but also in many other places, and it exists. And the atrocities in which people did and are still doing is not just a matter of convenience, or a matter of a small number of people who don't know what they are doing. To tell people that they don't know what they are doing. Some people don't know. Some people know it, and some people want it. And some people have a special, kinky, but very real desire for evil in many forms, in many ways. It may express itself in many different ways. Those ways in which we have the basic notion of that there is a cause to fight for or to fight against is one of those things that creates biggest and most concentrated amounts of evil. But evil can happen everywhere. You can have it in a nice little township in the United States of America, when a boy will go and begin to shoot and kill people. What is it? Of course, you can have psychologists who are the contemporary equivalents of witch doctors, and they will dispel all these kinds of evil by saying you don't exist, you are not real, you are just a matter they are what I call, instead of this kind of, you have other words to explain it, but you have evil happening, and you have evil happening in small ways, in a very, very small ways, almost in everyday life, by not just by special people that are others, but the people that we know, and of course by ourselves. From time to time, it jumps out. It's part of evil, which is to do things that are basically not just that they are not good things, but things that we, in a certain way, somebody enjoys because they are evil. And so it's a whole world full of it. It's not perhaps, or hopefully, it's not the majority of the world, but it is there. And it is there, and it appears in many different forms. Now, one of the basic things in which evil can work is by giving itself different names. And those different names are helpful in ignoring what is the real thing. If I see evil as it is, at least I may be frightened, or I may feel really that I abhor a certain event. But when I don't have it, and I give it all kinds of other names, and the names are being created, there are several works on that point, which is the huge amount and the huge ability of camouflage that evil has. Evil won't appear as evil. Evil will appear as something, sometimes, in fact, even holy, or at least worthwhile, or important, or one of the words that is perhaps one of the biggest defenses of all kinds of evil. It is necessity. Now, necessity causes sometimes more evil in the world than many other things that are theoretically far less abhorrent. But necessity, and because of that, I may tread upon people. I may somehow cut my way through them, whether I'm doing it with a sword or I'm doing it with a banking account, or I'm doing it in other ways. But the same kind of way in which something which is necessity or desire or will that cuts through to the lives of people. The victims suffer. That society doesn't even see what's really happening until it's too late. So the idea that the devil doesn't show itself is basically a true thing. Devil doesn't show itself. Devil is always appearing as something else, masquerading in all kinds of things. And let me tell you that I'm just using somebody else writing about it, that the devil is really very interested that you think about it as a creature with horns, with a tail, with all kinds of funny legs, because when the real devil comes, he's sometimes wearing a business suit, and he is really a well-educated guy, and then you don't see that is really a demon, but the demon is so well dressed and so appears so very nice, and one must add to it some of the, if I'm dealing with all kinds of demonology, some of the devils, not only the female devils, but also the male devils, some of them are extremely good looking. See, they don't have to be ugly. When people say that something is ugly as sin may be ugly in a very generalized and a very say theoretical way, but many sins are. Some of them are sweet, as it is even written in the book of Proverbs, that there is the sweetness of sin, and some of them are very, very clever, and some of them are also very beautiful. Now, all these things are our real encounter. Let me just say, our real encounter with evil is not just what all kinds of preachers of any kind, of any form, from those who are whether they are Catholic priests or rabbis, when they speak about sin. Sin may be caused by mistake, by stupidity, by other things. But there is also real evil in the world. And the real evil is a part of existence. Now, when I don't know it, or I try to ignore it, which happened many a time, in say, by big powers and others, when they try to ignore it, they will try to give it all kinds of other names, and they don't see what it is. Or you don't see what it is. Then that is the way in which it gains power, it grows, and it becomes more and more powerful and influential. So the world may have lots of it, in many ways, in many forms, and they are not always written in the people don't always speak about them in the say, not in the synagogues, nor in the churches, not even in the kindergartens. But you can see evil sometimes appearing among the small children, when one of them kicks the other just for the fun of it. It's a wonderful word, which I suppose the word was also invented by some devil who invented the word of fun, which means everything can go, and you do a lot of things you do for fun. You do it because look at the case. Somebody falls. Right? The first reaction is that people are laughing. Later on, somebody may become worried. But basically, all of it is the notion of fun, of being not serious, of being just mere words. But mere words become, later on, the words become deeds, and the deeds become horror. And they are all over. They are all over the world, in closer to us or in a more distant place. And you can see them if you're searching for them. Now, I'm not going to say about searching for evil and searching and going after evil and fighting it, because there may be other ways of doing it, more effective ways. But one has to remember that is a real thing. It is not just an image. It's not just an image that appears to somebody in a nightmare. It is usually a real part of real life, in which we have always the notion and the thing in the book of Genesis. It's possibly some of the material that some of you have read about this, the description in the book of Genesis, in which God says to Cain, see, that evil lurks on every door opening. That evil is there. That evil tries to get in. That evil is in a way in love with you and wants to be entangled with you. All these things are not just similes. They are parts of real life. And when I ignore them, ignoring them means one of the ways of yielding and not knowing, because when I really know it, I'm to know evil in the real way. When it is the notion of understanding evil is when one goes to hell. Then you can see lots of acquaintances and lots of deeds and lots of my past and lots of my present are there just together with me in hell, it's in many ways a frightening picture. I hope you are not frightened people, but it's a frightening picture, and you can check it. You can check it within yourselves or within the next and the closest people. There is a certain element of it. Hopefully, it is not a majority, but it is there. And ignoring it is just trying to avoid facing something which is true. See, and it is. Look, when we speak about it, there's what I call human evil, which is a fair enough amount, because we are inventive people, we are creative people, so we create new kinds of evil. We not completely new, people are not always so creative, but we create new kinds of it every time, every day. We create them, we enjoy them, and we make all kinds of mixtures with them. But you see, there is evil, what I call it, there are badness in the world as such. There are things. There are maladies. There is suffering. There is pain. All these things exist. And to try to ignore them and to say, all of this is just pure imagination. You just imagine it. It's not you just imagine it. You have it there. It is all around you. It is in a certain way. That's not the subject of my speech today. But basically, if you want to deal with it, you have to fight it. Not to ignore it, but to fight it. We can fight it, and in certain ways we can at least even conquer it in a certain way. It's not easy. It's not easy because it is inside and outside. We are involved with it in many different ways. And because of that, it's not easy to get rid of it. But there is. And we are trying. Not enough. Not fast enough. Because we are growing and we are, in a way, making all kinds of deals. To again, when you read it in the all kinds of storybooks about a person that made a pact with the devil, it is not done anymore because the devils are now far more elegant and far more sophisticated. They don't make a pact like this, and they don't buy a soul. They do it, of course, all the time, and they do it with many people, and many people that enter into any kind of a business and find themselves piece by piece drawn into things that are wrong and surely not right, not just, not true, not anything. And after some time you are so inside it that you can't even get out of the entanglement, which is the entanglement of death. Now, is it some people in the past, and not only in the very remote past, they spoke about the whole existence as this kind of a big fight between good and evil, and that this fight we have to choose our sides and to do it. But it is in most cases, in normal lives, it's not so dramatic, and it's also not so obvious. When people find that they are in hell only when they are dead. When they are alive, they have always excuses, or mostly they have it. So to have to deal with this problem, and let me just say, to deal with this is something that one has to face it. One has to face it. There is a certain kind of amount of darkness, and this kind of a darkness is a part of what exists and what is there. Now, let me go from this very general, I hope I hope frightening only to the right amount. Not because it's not the time where I'm going to raise all kinds of stories, of images, but people should look at these things. Should they say, as the prophet says, and you, in the times to come, when the redemption will come, you will see then what is the difference between the righteous and the sinners, the people who worshipped God and those who didn't worship Him. But it takes time. In our times, it's also always mixed up, which is, I'm not now going into high theology, but which is called in Jewish theology at least, that the beginning is not the sin, but the mixing up that comes from the tree of knowledge, and which should always be described as in the way it is written in the Bible. the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Because knowing evil is also a part of our getting involved. We know too much about it. We are somehow entangled with it, and sometimes we cannot get out of these meshes and the snares of that. So it is not only the big dark pictures that are just covering the sky. It's only once in a time when you have it, that when evil appears in such a horrible way. In a natural ways, or by mostly by human deeds, when you see all this. But what happens is, it happens in small details, in every household, in lots of angry words, in lots of unnecessary quarrel. All these are, if you want to call it, they are demons working at it. And these demons are a part of our life, and we somehow have a peaceful coexistence with them, which shouldn't be like this, because if we go on in the same way, we are not really progressing. We are regressing against what we call the reality of what happens, the kind of a constant poisoning of things that are happening in the world. Now, all this is just about theory, a little bit about philosophy, and a little bit what I call a little bit of reading the newspapers or listening to the news. If you are sensitive to it. But let me go back into the Talmud, because it is in that sense, you see, the devils there are in many ways they are not so horrible, and because of that we don't really have a really deep demonology in our scriptures, but we have mostly what I call something which is much softer and in a way more dangerous. Let me just begin with the subject that those of you who learned about that tractate from of Psachim, you could find it. There is a whole discussion that goes on for pages about pairs, about the danger of those things that go in pairs, that are, all these things are slightly or more than slightly, dangerous. You should be aware of them. Now, what is the whole notion of the pairs? Now, again, one can deal with just and much higher philosophy about the basic notion of the one, the unity, and the notion of unity, and the breaking of unity. But basically, what does the notion of pairs do? The pairs are the beginning of something which is, in so many ways, the beginning of. It's not the end of it, it's just the beginning. It's something like the small little line that makes the rift, which is the notion of duality. The notion that there are, what people say, there are the two sides of things. There are two sides, one side and the other side. There are these sides that we are for and against, the other sides in which we have in everything. Now, this notion of that things have always two sides, like coins, like so many other things that have two sides. It is not the end, but when we say in the Talmud there that the pairs are they are dangerous, because they are beginning of something of that the demon can have some kind of a rule over you. Now, if to say it in a more abstract way, See, when I begin with the notion that, see, with people so sometimes take it almost as simple. There are two sides for everything. There are not two sides for everything. But we see there are two sides for everything. When I do accept there are two sides for everything, it means that I'm beginning to open myself also to the other side. And the other side is there. The other side is there. And the other side, which is not the side of light, holiness, and glory, but the other side it becomes more and more apparent. We don't see it at the beginning as something distinct, but it is the fact that there is a duality. There are two things. It is not just, see, in the Talmudic times, there were several religions, Manichaeism, and after sometimes even some of the ruling religion of Iran at the time, at those times, which it was called of a belief in duality, a belief that existence is made really of two parts that are basically equal, the part of good and evil. And even when you say and you preach that you have to take one part, but at least you know and you believe that the other part is as real, as powerful, and perhaps more powerful than the other side. So it begins, as I say, it begins with a small notion, with a notion that, which is, I know it is very good, it's very helpful for being tolerant, it's very helpful for being democratic, and very helpful for being what I call nice to people. It is that everything has the other side. But does the other side means that there are two sides that are equally right? See, many years ago, when I was doing a decent job of teaching mathematics, and at that time, I had to deal with youngsters, teenagers and others, and they were sometimes trying to make a deal with me as a teacher. Why should this equation have this answer? And if I make a mistake, say just by 10% or 20%, why do you cut my whole mark down? The point is that in that sense, as in many other things, that they are not always, that there are two right answers. It's rarely when you have two right answers. Mostly you have answers that are, one thing is true and the other is, if I want it or I don't want it, it's untrue. So you have it, that's the other part of the other thing. The point of having these pairs is having a world in which you are ready to concede. There are two parts. There is one part and there is the other part. One says, some people say so, the other people say so, and therefore it's very nice to say that both of them are right, or at least that you cannot say that somebody is wrong. And the point is, there is the notion of truth, of what is right, is in so many ways unique, and it cannot be done. It cannot be done by peers. So this the whole page or so of dealing with peer numbers and so on is just, among other things, a notion about how can you have a world like this, a world which is based on dichotomy. The world that is based on cutting things into two parts. There's one side and there's the other side. Now, having this as a notion is, you try to make things in more complex ways. You see, you make them by 3s or by 5s or by 7s, and or by 13s. But you make things that cannot be cut in, so to say, in equal parts, in which both of them are equally right. So that is in many ways, again, it is, I know also about mathematics. Sometimes there are just two true answers for the same question, but not three in many cases, which means you cannot have all of it. So there's the true and the untrue, the right and the wrong. So this is one of the beginnings of those parts. Now, to speak about in a different level, and about the same thing, which is written slightly there in the Talmud. See, as I said, the Talmud doesn't deal much with demonology as a really important part of life, because in many ways it has also a way of understanding which is very strong and very powerful, which is true about from the law itself, from the notion of receiving the law from Sinai and Father, which is that there is a right way and there is a real no, and the no is a very big no, which is whether it is no, do not kill, or do not fornicate, or do not do other things. There is a no. There is a yes and there is a no, and the no is clear. Now, when you have it, and when you know that the world is made like this, then what you are dealing with is so many times, I would say, if I may say so, so many of the Talmudic demons are slightly, I would call them, they are like something like imps. They are not real full-size grown up devils, and because they are themselves, say, having all kinds of mixtures, because that is also the other part of it. It is not very, very common to see something which is purely good to the utmost point. Even the sun has blemishes on it. Surely the moon, but the sun has also all kinds of parts of it which are less shiny. But it is true also the other part, which is it also has to remember, which is sometimes also the way of what you may call it the way of redemption, the way of helping, is that there are very, very few things that are completely and absolutely evil. Most of the things in the world, even when they are dark, still have some little points of shining in them. Now I could go into more say in a deeper notion about whether evil can exist really as a perfect existence. Can evil exist as generally as something that is completely and entirely evil? Possibly not. Possibly even evil needs something of a help from something which is positive. It's very interesting, and you can try to work it out. That when the rabbis say that a lie can never be convincing if it's only a lie. A lie can be convincing only if you mix into it a certain amount of truth. Because try to imagine something which is a complete, absolute lie. Complete, absolute lie is perhaps something that you can't even say. Because if it doesn't contain anything real, anything true, so it cannot exist. But still, it has. So in many ways, those Talmudic demons, if I'm gathering not only from the material written there, when they say some of the demons are basically what they call very religious. Some of them are God-fearing. Some of them are keeping as many ways. They keep what they call, they keep the commandments. They are nice little devils in their way. But, and that is what the part what makes them, see, they are nice, and sometimes they don't do too much trouble, but they are always ready to do trouble. They are not doing all their day and their life evil, but evil is embedded in them as a part of existence. Now, and so the stories are in a certain way, which is sometimes it's funny. We have lots of funny stories. The stories in these pages of the Talmud are generally just organized, and they deal only with one or little other details of the thing. When you speak about what I call the other stories about them, they appear in a way. Some of them are just funny, and even the description is funny. So there is this side of it in them which is funny, and it just also means that when I have to deal with them, that is also a part of it. Because the evil is not just completely dark and completely frightening, because of that it has such a great power of being able to ensnare me in the same world, which is a world of compromise, the world of evil that is, so to say, within certain laws, within certain forms of behavior, and within the ways they say in another page, another part of the Gemara, Masechet Megillah, that devils don't say the name of the Lord in vain. They are very careful about it. So very nice of them, because they have, even the devils have laws, but still they are devils, and that's what I'm trying to say. Look, when people like Maimonides and many other people who are perhaps much lesser philosophers, when they say, okay, I don't believe in devils. It means, the question is, what don't you believe in? If you don't believe that the devils have exactly this kind of a picture, possibly they changed. They perhaps evolved with the time, and you don't see them. You don't see them anymore in other times. But basically, all these things is a world that is there, a world of smaller and bigger things that when I try to speak about, to say, I'm trying to be rational, positive, well-behaving, obedient to the law, and so on and so forth. It is just a part of the world, and there is another part, and as I said, there is the dark part of it. When the rabbis speak about the creation of them, they say that the devils were created just before the very final end of creation of the world. It was Friday afternoon, when creation was already completed. So they added some other things, and some of them are wonderful things, and some of them are what I call miracles, and some of them are just devils. There are some parts of existence that are there. In a certain way, they have also their uses. To speak about something like it's not, you won't call it the devil perhaps, but you speak about pain. Pain is, on one hand, to suffer from it is very unpleasant. But pain is basically also has a service in life, which is because it is a kind of this is the way of notifying us that something is wrong. So pain in a way is this kind of evil that is in a way trying also to do some good. But in general, this whole notion is, I can, and basically the rabbis take it this way. They have the devils and they have amulets, and then they say some of the things which is a very clear saying, which is, if you are not occupied with them, they will let you go. They won't mess with you, because they are what they are, and you can ignore them. But you can ignore them only if you are living in a certain kind of a way, and if you are trying to keep the walls of not having all these kinds of the myriads of evils all over you. Now, they are there. Some of them are basically what are called dangerous and parasitic on the active world. Some of them are just existing, and they are harmful just on the way they are doing it. Now, all these things, including also some of the pictures. The king of the devils, which is the great king of the demons, Asmerai, see, which is what I call an embodiment, the main power of it, and say, okay, this main power of evil doesn't deal with peers. That's not a part of what he's doing. He's really doing only great things. On the other hand, you don't know ever what are the limits. What are the limits of it? So dealing with all these stories about reading about demons. As long as I laugh, it means that they cheated me, they fooled me. It's one of the ways is they are good at fooling me. They are good at fooling me, as telling me they're just funny little things, and that you have them all over the world. Those funny things, those what I call these ways that they are. You can have it in social life, and you have some of you. If you are, as I don't see you, I cannot make any judgment. Some of you have been what I call boys and girls, and you know how much evil can be in the life of a small child, in the life of being in a class and being not what I call criminally molested, but molested by what I call by your friends, by your acquaintances, by people that make fun of you and so on. So you see those little things that begin by fun and sometimes end up with outright cruelty. There are all these things. There are all kinds of a picture. See, if you take those pages in Talmud, instead of, so you can read them easily and skip them if you want. You don't have too much of it, but you see the notion of, again, to speak about it, the big notion of dichotomy. The dichotomy. There are times when there are really you have pairs of good things, but you have to remember when things are being cut into parts, when there are two sides to a coin, it's always dangerous. It's dangerous not now, but it is a beginning of something. When you have those things that you are dealing with, and sometimes you don't see where they lead you. They begin with small things. They begin as a joke. They begin as something, as an idea that nobody can ever believe in. They begin as an exaggeration. They begin as something that everybody, the person that creates the joke and the victim of the joke laugh together. But there is a difference. So basically, dealing with these things, and I'm just saying, speaking about them and thinking about them it's not always an easy subject to speak about. It's not always any subject that people want to deal with, but it is basically. There is the point of, as Moses says when he passed from the people, I am giving you the choice, the good and the evil, life and death. Choose life. So this choice of life is not only about making grand gestures and saying, I am for this thing. It also means dealing with little things, the smallest things, and in a certain way, if one can, to banish those little devils out of your home.